Hey, Brats. Before we get started, if you are watching the video version of the podcast, either on Spotify or YouTube, the first batch of episodes that we recorded, we're actually sharing with you guys in really no specific order based on how we've recorded them. So you're going to get to see the building of our studio that we're currently in no specific order. So if you start watching this episode and you're like, oh my God, their studio is falling to pieces, what's going on? It's because you get to watch your journey backwards.
Or just again and again, back and forth.
Mm-hmm. We're trying to provide video to everybody, but we're not super good at it yet. And we're both broke. And I'm recording on my iPhone right now on like a tripod thing that's falling apart.
Yeah, the cat has already knocked it down at least once today.
Mm-hmm. And
Speak of the devil.
speak of the devil. Hi, devil. All right. Thanks, Brats. Let's get on with it.
Yeehaw.
Love you. Hey, everyone. My name is Robin, and I'm trans.
I'm Ben, and I'm trans.
And you are listening to Ben and Robin Are Trans.
That's us.
Yeah.
And we are trans.
Yeah.
And today we're here to talk about our wonderful partners
We're marvelous, loving partners.
who are the best people we know, I think.
Mm-hmm. The way we came up with the idea for this episode is basically Ben was like, my husband is amazing, and I just want to make an episode where I talk about how great he is. And I was like, my partner is amazing too, and I just want to brag about her the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're going to do. If you're jealous of our love, then you can just deal with it, because this is where we are now. This is what we do. So before we start talking about our wonderful partners, we want to share a special moment of joy, which is very much on topic. This is from one of our YouTube followers, Lizzie. Lizzie says, I don't know if this counts as a trans moment of joy, and it very does.
It is.
Very much.
100%.
I don't know if this counts as a trans moment of joy, but I did want to share this other trans girl that I've been talking to has recently started using the 4-letter L word. If it wasn't for being on hormones and openly being the woman that I am inside, I had never have met my moo. And I love her with all of my heart.
I'm getting emotional.
That's so cute. I love your moo too.
Yeah. I love love.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. And thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah.
And I'm
Thank
really
you,
happy
Lizzie.
for you both.
Yes. I'm so excited for you. And how your trans moment of joy is our trans moment of joy.
Yeah, I don't think you can probably tell, but my vision is blurry. There are tears.
Yeah.
There are tears in my waterline.
Mm-hmm.
Is just so sweet, especially like with how hard a lot of us have to fight in order to be ourselves, to be able to become who you're meant to be and then have someone else see that and love you for it and to love them back.
Yeah,
Joy.
it's beautiful. It is possible, and it's like just even more affirming when you get that. That's incredible. We're so happy for you.
Yes. And thank you so much for sharing. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Everybody else, if you have a good moment of joy to share, just get in those comments, get on the Discord. We want to hear them.
And if you're worried of whether or not it counts, if you're trans and it made you feel joy, it's a trans moment of joy.
Absolutely. You are valid and your story is kick-ass.
Yeah. And so are you. I mean, I think it's good it can be hard to date while trans well, you're trans the whole time, but like it can be hard to date while out as trans. It can be hard to date while closeted as trans. But I think it's important for anyone who's seeking that to know that there are good people out there, that real good and healthy relationships are possible. And it's possible to find someone who can grow with you as you find yourself.
Yeah. And as somebody who came out after already being in a long-term relationship, when we were at the beginning of that process, all of the representation online was like negative, like people's horror stories. Like if you're just looking on Google or whatever for like some idea of how it'll go when you come out, or like the process of your developing relationship, it's all like horror stories. And it actually worked out really well for us in the end. And now that we've been through so many things, I've been connecting with more people mainly through TikTok. But like somebody posted a TikTok that was, they were telling their story about them and their partner. And it was almost exactly the same as Aaron and my story, like beat for beat. And so, like, I went into the comments because I wanted to say, like, basically just like, yeah, that happened for me too. It worked out really well. And everybody said that it was going to fail, but it didn't. But when I went in the comments, it was all other people saying that.
Hmm.
Everybody's like, me too, me too, me too. Somebody was like, yeah, everybody tells these negative stories, but I literally have three friends who were in your same situation and it worked out so well for them. And I don't know any like bad situations. And obviously it can go badly too,
Oh,
but
yeah.
um, I really want to put like a more positive face to it.
And I think the more people talk about having positive experiences with this, the more people will understand that, like, that's a route you can take.
Yeah.
Like, you can be open and you can work on it and feel whatever feelings you're going to feel, but like not take it out on each other and either grow together as a couple or continue your journey as friends. Like, there's so many different ways that coming out in a relationship can go, but until you know, it's kind of like more people now are coming out as trans than ever because they know it's possible. I feel like decades ago, maybe someone would come out as trans and the spouse would just be like, I don't know what this is going to look like. And so that they just react with fear. But the more people come out and talk about their experiences, no pun intended, but the more people come out and talk about having good experiences, the more people will know that if this happens to them, it's not necessarily an end to what they've built.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people just assume that coming out is going to blow up their relationship because that's what they expect from what they've heard from everybody in the world.
Hmm.
And so you go into the process just expecting that. And I think if you expect bad results, then you're not necessarily going to work at it as hard or in the same way as you would if you were like hoping for the best and expecting everything to work out in the end.
Hmm.
And it like is really hard work. It's very complicated, but it can go well.
Yeah. Plants grow where they're watered.
Yeah,
So you just got to
100%.
keep nurturing that relationship. If you give up before you even try, then of course you're going to get a bad result.
Hmm.
But if you say, like, I've committed to this person and I want to give it a real shot, I think there's a good chance you can do it and then be so happy.
Yeah, absolutely. Do we want to get into like who our partners are and how we first met them?
Sure. Who should start?
Why don't you tell me and everybody else? I already know your husband, Chris. He's fantastic.
He's wonderful.
But why don't you talk about how you two met?
Sure. So, Chris, my husband, is a cis man. Um, I honestly never thought I would wind up with a cis man. Like, I was at a point in my life um, when we met where I wasn't really looking to date at all. And if I was dating, I was more interested in more of a T for T situation. So, trans for trans, just because I wanted to be sure I was safe. And based on where I was in my transition at the time, because I was already out, um, I was a little wary in general of cis people, especially cis men. Uh, but I joined a D&D group, and everyone was some brand of queer except for Chris, and I was a little nervous. But I was the oldest back then. I think I was 28 or maybe 29. And then he's 4 years younger than me. So he was about to turn 25 when we met. But then we had people in the group that were like one person was a senior in high school. And I was just like, all right, I'm the oldest. And we have someone who is the younger sibling of another player who's technically a minor. I need to suss out this guy, make sure he's safe. And so I ended up just trying to be friends with him. And we were best friends very quickly because turns out he was great. And we ended up falling in love and then not knowing it that we were dating for about a year, but we were totally dating and not knowing it at all, never touching. And then we admitted we were into each other when he had to move. So I moved in with him and then moved across the country with him, and then we got married. And it was really great. And he wasn't looking to date at the time either. We were just wanting to play D&D and like find some local friends, and we just happened to fall in love, and it's the best relationship I've ever had.
Yeah, it's so nice when you just get to marry your best friend.
Yeah.
Aaron and I started off as friends too.
Hmm.
We actually met, we've been together as a couple for probably 17 plus years now,
Wow.
actually. And married for 16 years,
Wow.
almost 17 years. But we actually met in church, kind of.
Hmm.
We met in like a campus Christian group when we were going to college together. And we were kind of just like in the same friend groups and like hanging out a little bit. And I think our relationship just kind of like gradually grew from that. Erin says that she was pursuing me for like way longer than I was reciprocating for. Like you were saying, like how you weren't actively trying to date at the time. I was at a place where I knew very well that I was trans, but I had no plans to be out because number one, like a lot of trauma.
Hmm.
And number two, I grew up religious and was still religious, and a lot of that was tied up in it. And I didn't feel like it was an option for me to be out. So at that point in my life, I was decided that I was just going to be a celibate, that I was not going to date anybody. I was like, I'm just going to live and die alone. And like, that's my life. That's what I resigned myself to because I knew that I could never stop being trans. And I knew that at some point it was going to come out and it was going to blow up whatever relationship I was in. And I didn't want to do that to myself or whoever I was in a relationship with. And so I was actively avoiding dating at that point in my life. So I also had feelings for Aaron for quite a while, but I was trying very hard to avoid them because I was like, I'm just gonna hurt her if I get too close. Like, I'm just gonna like cause trouble. This is not going to be a good situation. And so basically, we were both in love with each other for
Hmm.
a long time. And she was like, why is she not reciprocating or whatever? Does she actually not like me?
Hmm.
And I was like, I can't have her find out that that I like her because then
Because you
this is
don't want
gonna.
to hurt her.
Yeah, exactly. Eventually I couldn't take it anymore. And we did end up dating, went basically like straight into a very serious relationship and got married like a year later or something. Like
Yeah.
once I actually allowed myself to go there, like it was very whirlwind and we still really love each other to this day. When I even started the process, the very long process of coming out to her, we had already been married like over 10 years at that point and known each other for a couple years longer than that.
Hmm.
And I was in the closet the whole time, which is a whole separate experience that we can get into later.
It must have sucked, but
It
also
was a
been great
nightmare.
because you're with the person you love.
Hmm.
But like to know that she didn't know the whole you, even though like you're still the same person,
Yeah.
but like you're not really sharing your authentic self.
Yeah, exactly. That was always like an invisible roadblock in our relationship. We had a lot of like relationship struggles earlier on in our marriage that weren't necessarily addressed. Like we didn't really put words to it. I think she could always tell that I was keeping back things about myself and like not being fully open or emotionally available. Most of that was just from like being in the closet and not wanting my true self to come out.
Hmm.
So now that like I'm fully out and we've gone through that process, which was a much longer process between Aaron and I, like before I came out to everybody else. Like it was a years long thing that we went through. Now that we're on the other side, so like I'm a lesbian. Aaron is a straight woman and still is.
Hmm.
So like we're in a mixed orientation marriage now, which is its own complication, of course.
Oh yeah.
But despite that, and despite us, like, we're still in a place where we're figuring out what our relationship is now. But despite those issues, I feel like we're closer than we've ever been. Um, and we're just like really good partners. At least she's a really good partner to me. And being open and honest about everything has really just like changed our relationship for the better. Like, I've never had such a deep connection to a person before.
Yeah. And I think that is a misconception that a lot of people have is like sexual orientation, you don't have to live or die by the box you fit in. And like there can be exceptions. Um I will say like Chris, he thought he was straight when we met, but like he wasn't. And
Yeah.
like he didn't date much, but his brief dating history reflected that. And he just kind of didn't acknowledge it, but he has come out as queer since we got together. But it is possible to be in a queer relationship without being queer. Um, and it works for plenty of people. Doesn't always work, but it can work.
Hmm. Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it. Just a lot of it depends on what's important to you in the relationship. And I think for both of us, the most important thing is just that bond that we have. Ben and I were talking before, and we were both kind of saying, like, we're people who wouldn't normally use the term soulmate, but it's kind of the reality of that. Like, we're each other's person.
Hmm.
And that's something that is irreplaceable. And like, we've gone through a lot of like complicated, messy conversations and stuff over the years while going through the whole like coming out process and me coming to terms with my gender and everything. I think in the end, the bond that we have with each other was more important to us than necessarily our like sexuality.
Hmm.
Not that that's not important. I don't judge anybody for breaking up with a person or anything because that's like the most important thing for a lot of people, which is
Yeah.
okay. But for us, we're never going to meet another person like this. And we just like care about each other so much.
Yeah. There's so many components that go into a relationship, and it just depends on the people in that relationship as to what aspects of it are going to make or break it. But I think you and I are both really lucky where even if Chris still identified as straight, I don't think for us the sexual orientation part would have made as big of a difference as the fact that we understand each other. Um, we complement each other, not like, oh, you look beautiful today, but like we go together where like our strengths balance out each other's weaknesses, and like together we work well and we love each other
Hmm.
and we're happy. Um, and I think it's pretty similar for you too.
Yeah. And I think if you're planning on being together for life too, I think like everybody's experience is different, but before getting into a relationship, I was already mentally thinking about what's our relationship going to be like 60 years from now or whatever, like
Hmm.
as old people. What we have in terms of like a personal bond and our partnership is what we want to be when we're like tired old people too.
Hmm.
And I think like sex is important, but it's like for us, nothing compared to that like bond
Hmm.
and who we can be for each other for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, it is really fun, like to find your person and to be able to actually think about like if we get to retire someday, what's that going to look like, and where are we going to end up, and like what are we going to pour our energy into to build a later life for ourselves where we get to be together and enjoy it. It's like until this relationship, and I used to be like a serial monogamist where I was always in a relationship and they tended to be long term, and then as soon as I got out of one I was in another, and like I thought maybe I had a future with some of them, but until now it's never felt real, and it's just so nice.
Hmm.
It's so beautiful. Like we get to think about like what kind of garden we're going to have when we're old if we make it that far. My family history is sus, but like I'm hoping.
Yeah. One thing that Erin has brought up to me in the past year or so, like after coming out, at one point she was like, I know you're doing so much better now that you're out because you are starting to talk about the future.
Mhm.
And I've never heard you talk about the future before. It was always just like living day to day. That's very true. That's been true for most of my life because, first of all, blanket trigger warning for like the entirety of this
Oh
podcast.
yeah, for every episode. There's always going to be something coming up.
Hmm. But I was at least a little bit suicidal starting at age like 9 or 10
Same.
until basically until like I had left home. As a result of that, like I never planned ahead in life because I never thought like when I was a teenager, I was like, I'm never going to make it to my 20s. And when I was in my early 20s, it's like, I'm never going to make it to my 30s and so on and so on. And so never really planned anything. I just kind of like followed my instincts and just like stumbled into a college. Like I applied to one college and then I went there and I kind of just like picked a major and then switched to a random other major or whatever I was feeling at the
This
time.
sounds so familiar.
Yeah. So I know life plans, I know relationship plans, I know career plans. And now that I'm in a place where I'm able to like really accept myself and be accepted, I'm like finally thinking about the future.
It's like the surviving versus living.
Hmm.
Like they're so different. And I think I'm just now getting to a point where I'm starting to live even just in the last year. And I've been out since 2018, but it took until pretty recently for me to just be like, oh, okay, I am safe now.
Yeah, it takes a really long time to get to that point, and I'm still not there because the childhood trauma, it takes like I don't think I'll ever shake it, but it takes a long time to even start to break that like fear, I guess.
Hmm.
So one conversation I had with my therapist recently was I was like, I've been living as my true self for like a couple of years now. I don't know
It's
how
gone by
long.
so
Yeah,
fast.
exactly. But I was like, on face value, like I'm in a place that's very safe. I'm loved. I have good friends and allies around me. But when I stop and think about it, like, I still don't feel safe at all. Every day, like, I'm just, like, still afraid because of that, like, trauma still bouncing around in my
Yeah.
head.
There's still huge aspects of my life where I don't feel safe. I mean, you know about
Yeah.
my wariness of doctors and how I'm health wise in a very precarious situation. Um, but emotionally, I think I'm better than I've ever been.
Mhm.
But when you have childhood trauma, it can be really hard to thrive. Um, but having a good support system is so important. And we both really lucked out with our number one supporters.
Yeah, we really did.
Because
We really did.
I don't think we'd be anywhere near where we are without them.
Mhm. That's absolutely true, yeah. For Aaron, it was a really long process when we were having all these conversations before I was out to everybody else, like, it was a lot for her to work through, which, like, for obvious reasons, but she was always, like, still on my side. She was always very supportive of me. And as soon as I was out to everybody else too, like, she's been a very active ally. Like, if we're like in a conversation with other people and somebody misgenders me or something like that, she'll jump in right away and just like take care of it. Or if not directly, she just like makes a point
To
to,
work it into the conversation.
yeah, exactly. Like, use my proper name or call me she a bunch of times. I don't know if the other people, like, necessarily know that it's happening, but I do, and,
That's
like, I
what really
really appreciate
matters.
it.
She's been really impressive to me.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know how long of a process it had been behind the scenes, but like when I was first informed that you're on a new journey,
Mhm.
like I was like, I think they'll be okay. But when I first saw you two together, I was just like so impressed with how all in she was. I'm like getting emotional thinking about it.
Yeah.
Um, it was really beautiful, especially knowing that she is a straight woman. But she's like, this is my Robin.
Yeah.
It's just really cute.
Yeah.
Ugh, disgusting.
Yeah. She she loves me a lot.
It's really, really
Yeah.
beautiful. And I'm just really happy for you both.
Mhm. I'm glad that we were able to, like, work through this process and stay together because, she's just incredibly supportive and, like, affirming every day.
And I have not, of course, been a fly on the wall, but if I was, like, I'm sure it's been so hard for both of you.
Mhm.
There've probably been a lot of really hard conversations, but to a
Yeah.
certain degree, that's a part of every marriage is having a lot of hard conversations, and it's how you come through them supporting each other that will make or break it. And it's just I literally have tears running down my face
Mhm.
because I'm so proud of both of you, especially knowing that you met in a religious context and there's so many ways it could have gone. And usually in a deeply religious context, mixed orientation marriages can have a very, very different spin on them and a different end result. But like, I really believe in you two. It's just so
Yeah.
you're so beautiful.
Definitely, like, on paper, the odds were against us or whatever, but, like, my therapist at the time, like, once Aaron and I were in kind of, like, a more stable state after going through a lot of the stuff, she was like, "I, like, never thought you guys were gonna last." But well, she didn't say it like that, but she was basically like, "I thought there was a really good chance that Aaron was gonna leave you." But
I don't
I
think I
didn't
ever
wanna
thought
say
that.
anything and, like, put my thumb on the scale, and I wanted to make sure that you came out and were open and went through the process, and I didn't wanna, like, stand in the way of that.
I don't think I ever thought that.
Yeah.
Um, just because I mean, a lot of it is just the lens that I view the world in, and where have I traditionally dated men? Yes, but as someone who's gender presentation has changed. I just don't think the gender is the end all be all of what makes a relationship work. And I don't think I ever thought that. But like, that doesn't mean that it wouldn't be valid for a cis partner to have some big feelings. If their partner comes out, you know, and I think everyone has a right to however they feel about it. It's just a matter of how you process them and what work you put into it, whether it'll work or not. And I hadn't known the two of you that long, but I don't think I was ever that worried when I found out. It's just like, seems like they really love each other. I think it'll be okay. And even if it wouldn't have worked out, I had assumed that you would still be friends. You know?
Absolutely, yeah.
I don't know, I love love. It makes me emotional.
Love lifts us up where we belong.
I can't remember something where the eagles fly on a mountain high.
Yeah, and I know Chris has been a really strong supporter of yours too. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So like when we met over at a Discord group because like we had found this D&D group in different ways. And so like when I sent my first message, I was like, when you all meet me, you're going to think I'm a lesbian. I'm not. Like, I just want to be clear. I am Ben. My pronouns are he, him. So like he knew from day one that I was trans, but that I had not medically transitioned. And he's always taken the position of you are who you say you are. He doesn't really buy into this identifies as bullshit. It's like, that's just who you are. It's not how you identify. It's who you are. And anything that I want to do to my body, it's my body. He loves me for me, not because of my body. I mean, I don't think there's anything particularly special about my body anyway that's worth getting that attached to. It's just the vehicle that my brain rides in.
Yeah.
So it's just any surgeries I want, any hormones I want. He's just like, I'm here for you. I love you. And anything he can do to help, he's willing to do. He's willing to call doctors to make appointments for me, but he's never forced me into it. Honestly, he probably should force me into it a bit more, but he wants to be a safe person for me. And he does a very good job at it. And yeah, he's never made me feel wrong for feeling the way I feel. He's never made me feel forced into doing anything that I do or don't want to do. Like, he's never rushed me. He's never hindered me. He's just along for the ride, and he'll go with me to any doctor's appointment I need support at. And he's just really good.
Yeah.
He's
such a good guy.
He's really good. And he was raised in a very deeply religious background. And I spend a lot of time, not so much anymore, but when we first met, I spent a lot of time wondering how he turned out the way he did with the context he was raised in. Like, my expectations were that he would be a lot more dominant, less collaborative, but he wants everything that we do to be done together as a partnership, as equals, no matter what either one of us brings financially, emotionally, physically into the relationship. We're always equals, which has been really hard for me, honestly, because that's not how I was raised.
No.
So he has to remind me a
Me
lot
neither.
of times that we're equals.
Yeah.
That like I am not less than him. That I'm just as much a member of our relationship as he is. And like just because he makes more money than me does not mean I am worth less, which has been really nice.
Yeah. We always had like a very like egalitarian relationship from the beginning. And like probably in the beginning, Erin was like, "Oh, she's just a feminist or whatever." Like, just a good person.
Yes,
Yeah,
and
which, yeah, yes, and. But like, I don't know if I would have been the same person if I wasn't trans or not. My parents were very religious and very took all like the traditional gender roles and stuff like that like very seriously. And that did not stick with me at
Same.
all. Yeah.
Not the religious part. My mom is an atheist. My dad is religious,
Yeah.
but he just assumes everyone else is religious and then doesn't talk about it, so he doesn't find out otherwise. But yeah,
Yeah.
otherwise the same.
Yeah. But you can be an atheist and be hardcore about traditional gender roles and stuff like that.
And
Like,
they very much are, both of my
yeah,
parents. My mom will claim she's a feminist, but those are words, not actions, you know?
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's amazing how we've both managed to build such I'm not saying they're perfect. I don't think there's such thing as a perfect relationship, but they're much closer to ideal than the examples we were given. And it's so hard to break from what you were shown. And I'm very proud of that. And we were like, they say it works for them. I don't necessarily think it works for them. And I'm not doing that because I know it doesn't work for me. I think
Hmm.
that's something that a lot of people should just, I'm not saying have a relationship be like mine or yours, but find someone who has the same goals as you and don't compromise, because if you have to compromise, then they're not your person. And it might suck to be alone for a while, but the right person is probably out there.
Probably, hopefully.
And I recommend dating your friends as long as they want to date you too. But like,
Don't make it weird.
don't
Or
make
make
it
it weird. I don't care.
don't make it weird. But like, the right person might be right in front of you.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I have hot takes.
If you can manage to turn a friendship into a relationship, then that is the way to go. It's so much better that way than like, I feel like if we started off our relationship as like a dating relationship, I don't know. I feel like it would have been an entirely different thing altogether. But I never dated anybody else before her either, so I don't really know.
From my experience, I think it's really hard to get to know a person while trying to get to know a relationship dynamic.
Yeah.
Like that's a lot of learning that you're doing all at once. And I'm not saying that it would never work. Like I had a 4-year relationship where I was an acquaintance of a person, but we were really getting to know each other and dating at the same time. Um, but I think it's easier if you already know the person, you know their values, you know how to communicate with them. Um, and you're navigating that relationship having already known that. Especially if you are trans, like it's a vulnerable population to be a gender nonconforming person.
Hmm.
And like the statistics are out there. I don't know them off the top of my head, but it is really easy to end up in an unsafe situation. So if you start a relationship knowing you're safe with a person, it's much easier to find the road that you want to be on with them in a relationship without having to also worry about your safety.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I'm first of all, I'm so glad that I don't have to be on the dating scene now. And second of all, I'm very happy that I'm not straight because um yeah, men scare me a little bit.
The fact that I am into men is proof that sexuality isn't a choice
Yeah.
or attraction necessarily isn't a choice. Because
Hmm.
I'm sure we'll talk about this more in depth in another episode. But as far as sexuality goes, I'm kind of a no thank you. Like, it's there. It's not necessarily off the table, but like, have you tried crochet? Because that's way more fun.
I was never like a very like sexual person. I don't know that I would necessarily like call myself asexual, but it was never like a big priority to me. Like that's just kind of not how see the world or whatever. And
Intimacy
it's
is
interesting.
important, but it's not the only way to be intimate.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, for me and Chris, as far as like questions or things that we had to go through related to my transition, there's only one I can think of, and it was the only fight we've ever had where he told one of his cousins he was in a relationship with someone, and the cousin assumed it was with a woman, and Chris didn't correct him at first.
Mm.
And he just didn't want to like make a big deal about it because it was over Discord and they were playing I don't know, WoW or something, which he usually doesn't play. But I was just like, I'm upset. I'm going to sleep on the couch. I need my space. And he respected that. And then it took me like an hour before we talked it out and it was fine. And he like listened. He listened. He apologized. He corrected the cousin. And it's never happened again. That's like the only real big thing that's ever come up. I don't know about you. And obviously, like, never go into detail you don't want to go into. Like, I'm not, we're being recorded. I'm not trying to pressure you.
No, I have no boundaries.
Mood.
So don't worry about that. Maybe should have more than I should. I don't know. But I think I don't want to like put any like words into Erin's mouth, but I know that she had a lot of like feelings that she had to work through and everything. I don't know if I want to necessarily get too far into this one without
I,
seeing what she wants to share about it.
I think
So
it goes without saying specifics that it was a journey.
it was a real journey, yeah, especially having been together for so long. And I think also there's a very big element of the fact that I was closeted for so long during our relationship and marriage that like I was like lying to her about a lot of things the whole time. And in a relationship that's like definitely going to harm the trust that you have with each other. And I feel like that's probably one of the biggest things that she's had to work through with me is like the trust issue because now that I'm as open as I've ever been, like it's not as much of an issue anymore, but it was like a very unhealthy pattern for a long time. And it's like been hard to like rebuild that trust and everything.
I mean, it's no matter how you feel about it, it's still a shock. And it's still having to relearn. It's like going from, I'm assuming most people listening are right-handed. It'd be like going from right-handed to left-handed all of a sudden. Like it's your perception of something is flipped in a moment. And then kind of like the last episode we were talking about transitioning M. Night Shyamalaning and finding all the connections together. It's coming to terms with, okay, what was full honesty and what was the closet door,
Hmm.
and like trying to figure out where the dominoes are falling.
Yeah. And it's honestly incredible how supportive she's been considering that. I mean, just the fact that she knew me in such a different context for like years and years and like was able to almost turn on a dime and just like be all in supportive with me. Like I talked before about like how she helps out if somebody else is misgendering me or dead naming me. But she also like when I like officially changed what pronouns I was using, she like immediately changed, even though we knew each other forever. Obviously, like she'll slip up from time to time, but she always corrects herself right away. I know that was probably like a really hard thing to adapt to because that's not necessarily the kind of relationship that you had built up in your mind for all those years. And
Hmm.
to be able to just like switch around like that is like
It's
honestly
amazing.
heroic.
It's amazing.
Hmm.
Yeah. I might start crying all over again if I keep thinking about how proud I am of her, because like love is a choice. Um, and how you love someone is a choice. And to, I'm sure, have hurt feelings. I'm not saying that's for sure the case, but like I can imagine there would be hurt feelings, but to still want to show up for the person you chose and make them feel like they're loved in a way that feels good is so strong.
Hmm.
Like that, she is a strong person.
Yeah, she really is. Yeah,
Like a bodybuilder,
I know.
amazing.
No, she is seriously like the best person I've ever met. Just like such a good person to the core.
So cute. So
Yeah.
beautiful. You're both so beautiful.
Yeah. One thing you and I were talking about offline before is like, I know you really want to talk about like if you're a cis person in relationship with a trans partner or a trans partner in a relationship with another trans partner, like how can you really make your partner feel loved and affirmed? And
Yeah, I was bringing that up because I'm old in air quotes in the sense that I am in Facebook groups, and there's one that I'm in called "You Might Want to Learn More About Trans People," and I see a lot of times like cis people will come in and say like, "I'm starting a new relationship with a trans person. How do I make them feel loved?" And my relationship advice is always the same, and it's that the only person who can tell you how to make your trans partner feel loved is your trans partner.
Mhm.
So talk to your partner. Um, and like if you're in a relationship with someone who comes out as trans, I think it's important to know that you're allowed to feel all the feelings. You are allowed to feel angry. You are allowed to feel sad. You are
Mhm.
allowed to grieve, but you shouldn't be taking that out on your partner. If you need to, you should be going to a therapist. Um, and it's like okay to talk about it with your partner, but like you shouldn't be attacking your partner for finally feeling safe enough to come out to you. But at the end of the day, every trans person is different. Um, what might make one person feel loved might make another person feel gross. And
Yeah.
as long as you're asking questions from a place of kindness and wanting to learn and you're not being weird about it, like, I don't know, things like, well, is how we have sex going to change? But in a gross way? Because, like, it is a valid thing to ask about, but, like, you've got to ask it in a way that's not weird.
Yeah.
You know, like, how, how do I make you feel loved? Um, what words do you want me to use? What ways are you okay with being touched and not making it sound gross? That's my advice.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And that was like it took us a really long time to like get to those kinds of conversations. Um just because like for me personally, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, but because like I was like in the closet for so long and like because I wasn't talking about the like trans part of my life, which in reality is like most of my life, because that's just like my core identity. Because I wasn't able to talk about myself, about like the core of my identity as a person, that means I just was never talking about myself. And I didn't know how to share my inner feelings about myself. I didn't know yet how to communicate those things about like if my partner was like, what can I do to like help? What can I do to make you feel affirmed and loved? I didn't necessarily know like how to answer those kinds of questions. It was a really long, awkward process because I was still learning how to talk about me.
Yeah.
So, my advice for the cis person in one of these relationships is to just continue keeping that safe space for your trans partner and like keeping the dialogue open and like just knowing that it's going to be a long process. And for any other trans person who is just coming out or about to come out, who's been in a long term relationship, one thing that I did that I didn't necessarily do for this reason when we were doing it, but I highly advise is I came out to my partner like years before anybody else. And like we were able to go through the long, uncomfortable process for a long time without having the rest of the world involved. Because as soon as you come out to the rest of the world, you're like in the spotlight. You got to deal with all these things at the same time. And to have that ability to be able to work through a lot of things in your relationship before you're bringing the rest of the world into your relationship.
Hmm.
Like, I feel like that harms a lot of relationships of people who are in this situation because, like, you're just like throwing your partner into this crazy whirlwind of all these things that they have to adapt to at the same time.
Yeah.
That puts like a lot of strain on relationships. And I think it's okay to take your time to work through everything with that one person who's the most important to you and to really get a good foundation before you come out with everybody else.
Yeah, I don't think it necessarily has to be years, but definitely like,
Yeah. It took extra long for
yeah,
me because, yeah.
it depends on the situation and how safe the person feels. And I think years is valid. I think weeks or months is valid. It's just, it's already overwhelming for someone's partner, for someone to have their partner come out as trans, I'm sure. I don't know from firsthand experience. I've always been the trans one with people who are either already out or people who are cis.
Mhm.
But like, you have to figure out how to answer your own questions for each other. And as soon as you're out to the world, you're getting questions from people who, frankly, it's none of their business to be asking questions, but they're going to ask them anyway. So I think that's some auxiliary advice I have is if you aren't the person in the relationship with the trans person, it really is none of your business how the way they have sex changes or not. Um, it is none of your business what they want their body parts called. Uh, just be happy for them that they're finding their authentic self. And if you're really that curious, go find a book because we're not a freak show. Unless like we're having fun and like that's the kind of aesthetic we're going for.
Yeah.
But like we're not literally a freak show. Um, when I first came out, my mom was like, okay, well then how's sex gonna work? And it's like, you work for the health department, you know. Why are you asking me? You know?
Yeah, right.
Like, are you trying to have sex with me? You better not be. You're my mother. It's none
Yeah.
of your damn business.
Also, why does it matter to you?
Yeah.
Like, it's not your relationship.
Yeah. So I don't know. That's my general advice, whether you're in a relationship with a trans person or not, is if you're not the one in the relationship with that person, it is none of your business.
Mhm.
Don't be weird.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you want you want that couple to, like, be doing well and be in a safe space and everything, but how they work out the intimate details is, like, not your business. That's up to them,
Yeah, I think
unless
it.
they wanna
Yeah,
share that with you.
I think it's okay to be like, are you two doing okay? Do you need any support? Is there any way that I can help you um, find your equilibrium? Because chances are, if there's someone that you love who has been in a long-term relationship and this situation is suddenly changing, both of them probably feel like they're drowning.
Mhm.
It's not easy. I've never directly been in that where I came out when I was single and then I had two short relationships and then Chris. Um, but I can only imagine you've got to feel like you're drowning.
Yeah.
Be a life preserver. Don't be a brick tied to their feet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dang, this one got heavy.
It got heavy, yeah. But I think in a good way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Ben, it's been a real honor talking about our amazing partners for all this time. I hope everybody out there is desperately jealous and very irritated at us for bragging about our relationships. But they're great. They're amazing. And we need everybody to know that they're amazing.
And there is a Robin or an Aaron or a Chris or a Ben or someone completely different, but someone who will fill that role in your life out there for everyone if they want that. I fully believe that if you're patient, and especially when you least expect it, you'll find your person.
Yeah. Don't settle for someone who's not going to support you, whether or not you're trans.
Yep.
Hmm.
Awesome. Thanks for listening to Ben and Robin Are Trans. Join our Discord.
Yeah, get on that. We'll see you guys next time. Bye. Speak of the devil. Hi, devil.
What we're saying is if you are in a position where you have spare money, especially if you are not trans, because trans people have enough extra costs added to our lives
Mm-hmm.
in order to exist as ourselves, think about donating some money to help us get a decent camera set up.
We have big plans for the future. We want to do some like really cool stuff, but we're broke, so we don't really
But
have anything to offer. But I can absolutely make some stickers and mail people some stickers. I like making stickers. If you
and
want some cool brat
I
stickers.
have a collection of literally thousands of postcards, so I could send people postcards.
Hmm?
I love writing
I love that.
mail.
This sounds fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, brats.